Bonsoir tout le monde. Bienvenue à
Good
cette
evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies.
alors, ce soir, c'est une réunion
This
stratégie.
evening is our strategic committee meeting. We're not taking any decisions today. We're hearing presentations
dans nos réunions
and
futures,
we'll take them into consideration in future
les informations
meetings.
que vous avez partagées avec nous.
So we'll be considering the information you share with us.
Pour commencer,
To start,
on a une présentation d'organismes
we have a presentation from the Dieppe Arts and Culture Center from Séverine Fox and Ms. Paula Morin. Good evening. To the Municipal Council, good evening. This evening, we will present you an overview of the strategic perspectives for the Centre des Arts. We will talk to you about our vision, our success stories, our targets for 2023. Each of these areas will be centered around three axes: governance, resources, financial health, and large-scale strategic activities. And we'll also speak to you about future challenges. We couldn't start without saying that the reason of being of the Centre des Arts et de la Culture is that we're all here for art, and art is here for all. Arts and culture play an important role in the development of children and of full cultural citizenship. This is an added value to the community. Our mission is quite broad and inclusive and multidisciplinary. Our successes in terms of governance and human resources is that we were able to refresh the board of directors and the strategic committee and the management committee. Recently, the artistic director was changed and has been filled by two human resources, Christian Kit Gauguin. In terms of our relationships with organizations, we should cite the city of Dieppe, but there are other organizations that are affiliated to us closely and less closely. These are stakeholders. In terms of our successes, the financial health in 2022 was good. We made it out of four quite complex years. There was a challenging fiscal year end in 2021, but we were able to lead with careful management and able to have a balanced budget forecast. We will count on the support of many factors. For example, having an emergency fund, having support for our operations from the city of Dieppe as well. And there will also be other funds allotted to engaging the public and uh, planning. In terms of financial health, the center generates the city of Dieppe generates about 23% of our funding, and then followed by the provincial government and federal government. 57.7% of our expenses are allotted to salaries. And then in terms of professional artist fees are equivalent to 18.6% of our budget, and then administration and operations are 23.7%. Other successes in 2022 for our strategic activities, what we want to point out is the return to in-person activities with the relaunch of the activities of the center and as well as the residents of the center, which are organizations that are focused on many arts, including literature, dance, and music. We've also improved on our cultural programming. We've had 25 shows, three of which were sold out. This is a good news and also a sign that people are coming back to in-person events. There's also 23 artists that exhibited their works in the gallery and in open spaces, and then we also organized 15 film screenings with many loyal partners. Another great success was the launch of our membership plan. This happened earlier in the season, and it's starting to gain traction, which has many advantages for the card holders. We also had the first festival of Cajun cultures, and we were able to develop a strong partnership in the musical area. And we also created a new reception area that would make circulation in the area safer. And with the help of Heritage Canada, we were able to manage a better flow in this space and the comings and going in the center. Other activities included the artistic uh, that we consulted, gave artistic consultation on the Banquet Expansion Dieppe, but also a benefit concert for Ukraine that took place last year in April, and then the launch of Dieppe Pride. The last activity that took a lot of our energy and was also a success, it allows us to be better recognized is to modernize our strategy and our branding. This was important work, and you'll see on your desks there is an example of this new branding with our activities report, which will be updated in the coming weeks for the fiscal year ending very soon. Now let's talk about our objectives for 2023 under these three themes, so governance, financial health, and strategic activities. So for governance, our activities are to continue in um, resuming our activities and breathing a new life and seeking positive change. We're looking to find expertise. We're trying to find also a new CPA on our finance committee, but other activities in human resources, which are an important element of our organization that we count on human resources to help our team grow and to be more sustainable in the future. We have new synergies in terms of partnerships that are occupying us a lot. We have a long list of partners already, but this list is always growing. We are open to all community organizations, and people uh, are referring other organizations to us to discuss more partnerships. We're also seeking to start work on defining the strategic planning for 2027, and this is going to keep us pretty busy in the coming months. In terms of economic health, we're seeking to find a CPA. These are hard to find, but we are on the hunt. We're also trying to diversify our funding sources so that we can guarantee our financial future. There are new things that we want to explore that we haven't done yet. One would be to turn to the Canadian Council for the Arts, which is now possible because we earned a new status and is the result of years of work in the past. And another thing we would like to do is to reach out to the business community. This way, we can build awareness, do fundraising among this community. And I'd also like to mention that last week, the Centre des Arts et de la Culture de Dieppe became a member of the Chamber of Commerce of the Greater Moncton area, and this will help us move forward in this direction. Among strategic activities that are driving our work is we are trying to contribute to the cultural influence of Greater Dieppe. We're trying to give life to more collaborators and invest in arts and culture. But among these objectives is to re-engage audiences and reach out to new audiences. There are always new groups that we can reach out to and attract to the Arts and Culture Center. We're trying to create a bridge between our center and local cultural infrastructures, for example, the Doiron House, the Uniplex, and other entities. So this is an objective that we hold and that we're slowly working towards with the collaboration that we already have between our teams. We'd also like to continue providing quality and diverse programming. So we're working on the next season by adding new disciplines, for example, dance. So this is the type of work that we're doing. Ms. Morin said earlier, we have Christian Kilgogin that is joining us on the programming, the programs for theater arts. And in conclusion, I would like to say that in terms of strategic activities, we have worked on the branding and awareness of the center. We're working on communication tools. We're also working on a project for the exterior signage of the center to make sure that it is recognizable. We're going to have a marquee and better lighting so that people can really be aware of the center. And through this, we will need the contribution collaboration of our partners with the City of Dieppe and the Art Center. This is very important and it's also very effective. We also would like to renovate and expand the house's capabilities through the Community Space Fund. And this is provided by Canadian Heritage, and this would allow us in the very near future to have an internal bar area, to have a new uh, box office. We'd also like to install a fixed bar. In the last 10 or 12 years, we've had a very um, flimsy bar set up and with limited capacity for public events. We'd also like to renovate the office spaces and to reorganize them. And we'd like to also acquire some new equipment. Another thing that I'd like to talk about is a pottery studio. Many of you know that the center is recognized for the quality of its pottery and ceramic studio. In the last few months, it's been placed under observation, so to speak, to find new ways to manage it, to allow to have a technician on site. And so the pottery studio will reopen shortly. It's actually unofficially opened today because we have an artist that has returned to use this space, but there will be an expert ceramicist that will be hired to manage the workflow and programs associated to this space. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about in terms of our objectives for 2023. So now let's talk about future challenges in terms of funding and human resources are part of our challenges. We want to continue to implement inclusion and diversity plans. We also want to adapt to new technologies and new types of entertainment that are available. And that's it. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the Municipal Council? Ms. Goudreau. Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Congratulations. I've been a client of the Arts Center for many years as part of my profession. And over the years, I was able to see the progress that's been made in terms of the activities, how the center has evolved, how the lobby is always in use. I really admire the work you've done, and thank you. I have a question, and I don't know if you can answer it, but my question is about engaging new audiences. Do you feel that the current programming reflects the people that live in town, newcomers, the percentage of Anglophones that live in town? Do you feel like you're appealing to the needs of the diversity of the population. It's something we're working on. We have a collaboration with the CAFI, which allows us to reach out to an important portion of these newcomers, but that's not our only focus. Also, we're trying to work on our awareness. And the goal here would be to attract people to come to our center and discover it. Of course, we have visual arts and theater arts that are attractive, but also other organizations are driving new audiences to us. And then there's also youth. We are working or have been working for the last 2 years to provide more programming for youth and family audiences. We're trying to take advantage of the synergies between groups, for example, with the Salon du Livre to provide shows for families and youth. We also have a musical mandate. We've recently named a representative for youth audiences in the board of directors. So this is something we're working on. I think we have good tools. We're really striving to leave no one behind, and we want to develop pure artistic activities, but also cultural activities that allow us to put on events for other organizations, for groups coming from India or Africa. These groups come and seek us out because they know that we offer a broad range of services. I think we're on the right track in terms of including all of the the communities. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Goudreau.
Madame Turgeon-Roy.
Ms. Turgeon-Roy. Thank you. Thank you, Séverine and Paula. The question I have is about your service offering and your programming plans. Can you tell us more about the associations you have with school districts and school in general? I think this is an important part of it in terms of involving youth. Yes, so on the school district front, there are many collaboration styles. One that has been going on for many years is through the GACEF. We've been working with them every year to build projects with school bands and choirs. So here we have a didactic and artistic educational mandate through song and bands. So this is one project among many other. The Francophone School District also is a big client of ours. We have a long-term relationship with them, and this goes through secondary schools. We have a very close-knit relationship with a community theater group. And this is led by a man who is a vice principal of l'Odyssée. And with Mathieu Martin for next season, we are seeking to co-present a show, a rap show in the school auditorium. So we're going to be working on more shows and activities that are targeted at school audiences. I also had a meeting with a representative from the Anglophone School District who is trying to build a relationship with us to serve their immersion teacher, language immersion teacher community. And this is new for us, and that they see us as an organization that is able to serve this audience. And there are over 6,000 teachers in the English school district that work on the French immersion programs. So this is an important new audience that we can attract to the Art Center.
Madame Godbout.
Ms. Goodboo, excellent presentation. I'm always looking forward to hearing what you're up to. I think you're an important partner for our community, especially when you bring together Francophony, culture, and art. I think you're a fantastic partner, and I'd like you to continue on with your fantastic efforts. I have a question. We're meeting many councils and committees, and you did mention one issue, which is human resources renewal. I see that you had a lot of turnover in your board of directors, and congratulations on bringing in new blood in that group. We've experienced this by onboarding new city councilors, and I'm wondering what you guys are doing to integrate your new directors. Certainly, they arrive with an interest in your work, but then what else do you do to onboard them into your mission and get them to promote culture the way you do?
Oui, comme tu veux. C'est sûr qu'on a un manuel, donc on a une belle
Of
bible
course, we
avec
have
plein
a
d'informations.
manual that we provide to them when they first start out. It's a hefty
On est
tome.
disponible pour répondre à
And
toutes
of
vos
course, I'm
questions.
always available to answer their
On a du sport
questions.
en fin de
I'm
semaine.
there anytime during the day, evenings, and
Il y a des
weekends.
missions
You
là.
know, we have
Oui,
meetings.
ben, Paula a raison.
Paula is
Il faut leur
right.
donner
We
très
provide
facilement
them with a lot of
les
tangible
outils nécessaires
information.
pour
We're really
réussir
working hard on uh,
ces politiques publiques,
digitizing all of this
notamment
to feed
sur
into our
notamment
environmentally sustainable
sur
practices. Having a
l'environnement,
digital
les
guide
choses
would be better, but then
les choses
there's our
qui
governance, our
sont
policies, our mandates
significatives
that have
dans ce
been
que ce que
accumulated over
on
the
fait.
years.
On
And
en
then from there, it's about
on
human
en profite
connection. People join us
à la fois
because they want
des
to
personnes
work on the mission of the organization, but also to develop their professional
mais aussi des volontaires.
connections.
Donc,
We also
faut
want
faire
to make
savoir
sure that our board meetings
de
are
sorte qu'on ait le temps
fun activities. So we always
de
make sure that we have
s'arranger
time to
pour
exchange
pour se
after.
rencontrer déjà
And
plusieurs
of
fois
course,
avant le départ.
you know that we meet people more than one time
Donc,
before they join
moi,
the
je suis
board.
très
I'm
reconnaissante
personally very
vraiment
proud
d'activité permettre
of our annual
à nos
reports. I think
partenaires
that it gives a really good overview of our philosophy and
on
values.
n'a pas de formation, c'est sûr qu'on
So we don't
fait
have official training.
des ovaires, des fois c'est
Certainly, we would
exceptionnel,
love to
l'équipe
have an
des
official
ressources
onboarding and training with the
humaines
human resources and the board of
nous aide à
directors,
cela et
but we're
bien.
still working
Et la
on
fois que le centre
developing an official method. But so
a
far,
ouvert
so
la
good.
candidature
This is the first
des
time that the
membres
center
du
has had an
conseil,
open invitation for board members.
l'année dernière ça se faisait en
Until last year, it's
chaque
something that
membre
was done
avait une invitation
through word
et
of mouth. And this time we had an open call,
on était vraiment
and
très
we
touchés.
received a lot of attention and interest for this request.
Merci.
Thank you.
Je ne vois pas d'autres questions, alors
I don't see any other questions,
aussi
so I'll give my own comments here.
au centre
I'm
des arts
seeing you
où il y a eu
do your work at the center, and I'd say that there is
quand je vais au centre des
vast improvement compared to the past. When I go to the Centre des Arts et de la Culture, I can see with my own eyes that there is bustling activity compared to how it was in the past. I think this is a sign that the Centre des Arts is alive and well and that your work is successful. So I thank you and I encourage you to continue on this path. We thank you for your support. Thank you. The next presentation is the Salon du Livre de Dieppe with Liette Paulin-Leblanc.
Je parle-tu au micro?
Bonsoir,
Bonjour tout le
Madame
monde.
Liette Paulin-Leblanc.
Oui, bonjour.
Good
Vous m'entendez?
evening, Ms. Paulette-Leblanc. Yes, can you hear me well?
Je me
Great.
présenter. Je suis la directrice du Salon
So
du Livre de
I'm the
Dieppe.
director of the Salon du Livre de Dieppe. Can you get closer to the microphone?
Là, c'est mieux.
Is this
J'ai pas
better?
assez de voix, donc.
I don't have a very loud voice, so I do need all the help
Je
I
vais
can
commencer
get.
par le mandat de
So I'd like to
l'organisation.
start with the mission of the
Dans
organization.
les objectifs.
You must know
Je vais
also
parler
of our
d'exercices de
objectives.
rédaction que j'ai
I'd like to talk
effectués
about our
durant
success stories from
l'année
2022,
2022.
but I might also
Puis
throw in those from
les
2020 and
défis qui
2021.
s'affrontent
And of course, I'll speak to the
présentement
challenges that are coming. Of course, our organization seeks to promote the French language and the cultural recognition of the French language and the Acadian culture in the southeast of New Brunswick, starting from Miramichi all the way to St. John, which is the school district territory that we cover as a minority language group. So I won't read all of the objectives, but it is to promote reading, to promote publishers, local bookshops, local authors, and also to encourage people to develop a love of reading, to increase literacy. So I would say that this is an important part of our youth programming, but there's also important and interesting programming for seniors because we know that reading has so many advantages. So, success stories. We just closed our 32nd edition of the Salon du Livre back in October. During the pandemic, we moved our activities to the des Arts et de la Culture de Dieppe, and we got very good feedback and excellent collaboration from the center. We've also added partnerships. There have been many, including the Wincate, Café Inclusio, and Mercedes. The authors were very happy to be able to be shuttled around in comfortable vehicles. But we also have partnerships with the Association francophone des aînés du Nouveau-Brunswick. We are soliciting Kodak NB. Uh, there are many other organizations. We have over 40. I couldn't possibly name them all, but we are doing our very best to reach out to the community. And this year we had something new. We had an audiobook station. So we don't want people to focus only on paper books. We also want them to just learn to love the stories. We're also looking to expand our audience to attract people who love all sorts of stories, essays, crime novels, biographies, etc. So we really try to have a variety of documents. So our challenges for the future are, of course, costs. I wasn't here when the earlier presenter spoke to their challenges, but costs are increasing, artist fees are increasing, wages are increasing. We're trying to provide authors with fees that are in line with the market. Of course, there's lodging and transportation of both authors and books. There's also uh, rentals for kiosks. Their costs have gone up as well. So the cost in general is going upwards. Of course, there's the cost of recruitment. Our distributors and authors and books are coming from Montreal. Books are very expensive and the costs keep going up. And then we try to recruit volunteers. We have a good bank of volunteers, but of course, with the pandemic, some of them were more fearful of coming out in 2020, 21. It's always a challenge, but we make out okay. When we do have volunteers, they are extremely persistent and perseverant. We appreciate them so much, and they are such a huge part of the Salon du Livre. That's all for my presentation. I don't know if you have any questions. Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments from council members?
Merci. Premièrement,
Councillor Godbout. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the book fair. And I have 3 kids, and we've spent a lot of time in those fairs exploring books, and you've made the work easier for us to get our children interested in books. But there's a question that I've always had and wanted to ask, and I've never kind of looked in it further. So when there's a book fair, and if you're a parent that wants to buy books, our kids don't tell us what they want, but how does it, what should a child do or a grandparent do uh, to find books? Because the way it's organized is it's by editor and publishing house and so forth. So I have to admit that it's a bit overwhelming. Already you're not sure what you're going to do. You're looking for books, you're looking for recommendations and so forth. But so I would go and I would talk to each publishing house and ask them what they have. But I have 3 children. But is there a trick? I'm thinking in terms of increasing your sales too. When people go there, they want to buy books. So how do you go about that? How do you encourage people to buy books? How do you make recommendations? Are there things that people should do before getting to the book fair, or are there things that you do to help people align their interests with the books that are on sale? Um, so I've gone several times, but it's always a challenge, and I'm sure I'm not the only parent or grandparent. And that's another thing. Grandparents ask parents, so what we should be buying for your kids. I always recommend books, but it's hard to do. So do you have suggestions for parents about how to book out how to go about this. Well, as a book fair, we're not the ones who sell the books. We aren't choosing the books that are exhibited. And often parents will ask us to group books by youth, adult, and so forth, but that's but it's really based on the exhibitors. They buy space to exhibit their books. So when parents come and see us, or adults or whoever, for recommendations, when they come to see me personally, I can give them advice, but our volunteers will send them to a publisher or a bookstore, the bookstores that are present. So La Grande Ourse represents a lot of publishing houses, so she'll know a lot about their books. But as a book fair, that's why we offer programming. So there's programming that's open to the public, and when the parents go with their kids to these programs, now if they see these books before, they can choose the events that they attend, and authors can buy them as well. But what I recommend is to go and see the exhibitors, go and see the authors and the bookstores that are on site, and ask questions that are based on the interest of the child. It has for a book to be interesting for a child, it has to be interesting. It has to align with their interests. If you buy a book that is not interesting, chances are that they're just going to set it aside. So you have to know what they like. Do you work in partnership with like school librarians as well? Maybe I could go to the. I'm just trying to think of different ways of helping. That's somebody else I could go and see. We do offer a day of training. So the Wednesday before the book fair, we offer training to all school libraries and all the library staff. Actually, it's a half day of training, and then the other half day that then they spend the other half day buying books for their libraries. But so yes, we do consult school libraries, and they are a key partner of ours. And each year, I send an email out to the school libraries for recommendations of authors and publishing houses. All right, I don't see any further questions, so Ms. Paulin-Leblanc, thank you for your presentation, and you too continue the great work that you're doing. I know that the book fair is successful every year, and thank you very much. The next presentation is on the on-demand public transit, the 2022 report with Mr. Luc Richard. Hello, councillors and dear colleagues and members of the public who are following us online. We are here tonight to give you an update on our pilot project of the on-demand transit, and I'm here with Anik Kenny, a colleague who will also be participating in the presentation. She is a key person in the success of the project and the operations of that service. So she will be speaking to us later this evening. So basically, just to give a bit of context, on-demand transit is currently offered in the evening and weekends, Saturday and Sunday. We have a minibus that goes through the community and minivans as well. And there's been a huge increase in demand. The pilot project has been in place since July 2021. And it will be in place until the end of this year. My colleague Jeremy will be speaking later this afternoon. So we're currently analyzing the place of on-demand transit within the public transit network. And so that's part of what we're working on right now. What are some of the advantages? Well, it allows us to offer greater coverage of the city, the elimination and reduction of transfers as well. There's a direct access to various Dieppe destinations, and it also allows us to increase the service availability and frequency. Now, we have some challenges. There's a huge increase in demand. There is also, we've just had our territory was enlarged. The capacity of our supplier is a challenge as well. So if we want to offer more hours, it's a small supplier, so we have to take that into consideration. And we need, our current fleet is getting older, so we need new accessible vehicles. Now, who is involved in on-demand transit? There's our current clients. There are organizations such as the airport and so forth, and then there are future clients. Now, if we don't have on-demand transit, there are alternatives. So there are fixed routes that we could put in place. We could reduce the service area, and that's what we had before on-demand transit. Our big buses can't go onto all of our streets. So, and if we just have big buses, then the service that can mean a reduction in service. We talked about servicing the airport. There is demand in that area, and also to the east of the municipality. So those are new areas that we have to consider. And then another alternative is changing the schedule. Now, just a reminder of our hypotheses and our assumptions and our objectives when we set up the program. We were looking to provide better customer service. We wanted to reutilize or better use our resources. And remember, when this program started, we were in full pandemic mode, and so we were really looking for a solution. And another assumption is that we could probably reduce the number of miles or kilometers covered by our vehicles, which in itself could lead to a reduction in cost and service improvement. So those kind of were the assumptions and objectives that we had in mind. And maybe I'm being a bit repetitive, but there you go. All right, so then there were customer objectives or client objectives. We wanted to provide better service. So basically that's the context. And now I will hand the mic to my colleague who will talk about statistics for use in 2021 and 2022. Hello, everyone. Dear counselors, I am happy to join Luc this evening to talk about how this project has developed and to give you some statistics for 2021 and 2022. I'll start with 2021 and the number of trips. So we went from an average of 442 trips per month to roughly 1,032 trips per month in 2022. And then there was, we think, and we think that the rise in number of trips was because of the end of the pandemic, and that's why we have a higher number. Now, on this slide, what we're seeing is comparisons for the second half of the year of 2021 and 2022. So 2021, the increase is tied to increases in the system and to the increase in clients at the beginning of the pilot project. In 2022, what we can see is a marked increase and a stabilization in terms of the number of trips per month. The costs of the project in 2022, it was around 184,833, and that includes drivers, the agreement with Blaze, which is the provider of the application that we use for the on-demand service, and it also includes the costs of the agreement with Answer 365, which is basically the call center. and it allows us to offer reservation services outside of city hall hours. And it also includes the costs of gas and vehicle maintenance. So if we compare with per hour cost with a Kodiak Transpo, which is $110, the cost of the on-transit service is $75 per hour. So what's interesting is that for a lesser cost, we can offer service in a wider area. And it also, as we said, there are other, Luc talked about all the other advantages as well, such as more direct access and so forth. Let's look now at the distance traveled by these vehicles. Now, Luc mentioned this before. So there's an average distance covered of about 3,750 kilometers per month, and that was for 2022. If we compare that to a fixed route for the same number of hours of service, there's about 5,000 kilometers per month. So we checked the figures before, and we didn't think there was a difference in terms of the mileage. But so we've made gains in terms of numbers of kilometers. Now, in terms of the average number of passengers on board vehicles, the average went from 1.3 to 3.1 or clients rather in 21 and 22, and it remains a challenge. We'd like to bring that number up. The vehicle itself has 11 spots, so we would like to work to increase the number of riders within the vehicle. However, note that the drivers are telling us that the minibuses are almost always full. So, and we've also seen an increase in the number of group reservations. So it's not always just one or two people reserving, but sometimes we get 3 or 4 people reserving at a time. Now, this slide shows refused trips. So there's been a very high marked increase in number of refused trips. Up to 230, 187, 162, and 232 in the last 3 months. And so what we did was we added a second vehicle at the busiest times on Saturday and Sunday. And we think that we could return to the need for a fixed route. So we're working to reduce the number of refused trips. Unique users, what that is basically about is, so here you see the comparison. We've almost double the number of users since the pilot project was launched. Customers' evaluation or the client's evaluation is very high. I think the last time we checked, the percentage of clients that were leaving feedback, it was about 20%, if I remember correctly. So there's a good number of people who are giving us or who are leaving us feedback, and it's very positive. 4.6 out of 5 for 2020, 4.9 rather for 2022. What we see in this slide is the busiest zones. So the CF Champlain is the most busy place for people getting on and off the vehicle, and clients that are living outside the areas not served by the fixed routes are also big users of the system. So the east of Dieppe Boulevard, and in the airport sector, there's a strong demand from riders. And I will hand the mic back to my colleague. So what's interesting in the previous slide is that data allows us to kind of adjust our service, and that's data that my colleague Jérémy will be able to use when he's planning for growth. So what are the next steps? So we're proposing a concept and a vision for public transit, which we'll hear in a few minutes from Jérémy. There will be a public consultation to validate certain things that we're going to be proposing to the public. And it will include an integration of on-demand transit in the public transit system. So there's room for it, but it's maybe different from what is currently offered. And for those who are hoping for improvements, we recently met with Kodiak Transpo, and we're hoping to make changes in the spring and summer. So we'll be coming back with more shortly. So that's for our presentation. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments. We're here to answer. A question from Ms. Boudreau. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. On the slide for refused trips, that happens near the end of the year, but what are the reasons for those refusals? Was it just the system that wasn't able to accommodate the requests? What is behind the refusals? Well, traffic, when there is a lot of demand, it outstrips capacity. Sometimes there are also people who try, 4 or 5 times to book their trip. And when somebody makes a request, the system will verify, within the next up to 60 minutes ahead of time, and if that doesn't work, then it'll refuse the trip. So some people think that by trying 2 or 3 times, that so that's another factor. But the big thing is the demand and versus the capacity, and the mismatch between the two. Thank you. Councillor Lantaigne. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd have a couple questions and a couple comments. So first of all, I want to congratulate Luc and his team for this great project. I'm on the Kodiak Transpo board, and they use, Dieppe, Moncton, and Riverview have been talking about this project as an example. So they find it a really interesting project. So you've really done a good job. And it's interesting to see that we're able to offer a better service for less cost. So that's something that we should pay attention to. And let's hope that on-transit service is there to stay. So the ridership increased. I know that at one point there was bugs with the system, and people were complaining about various things. But I see that the satisfaction level is quite high. But are there still complaints? And what are those complaints? What are the most common complaints that you're seeing? Well, the system is still being developed, but I think we've achieved a certain level of success, and often there's a certain amount of education. New users don't necessarily know how to use the system, but there are always a few bugs. Optimizing the vehicle with regard to the trip. So whether it's on the east or the west side, sometimes there are little issues with that, and we keep working on those. But to come back to that, satisfaction level, we've only got about 20% of users that are responding. So we know that not everybody is satisfied with the service. Some people want want to see fixed routes back. So yes, we've had a certain amount of success, but there's a certain part of the segment of the population that is not satisfied. So I wanted to put that in perspective. But often we hear from people who are not satisfied than for people who are satisfied. Yeah, well, I mean, 20% of riders are coming out very positively in favor of the system. So now you were talking about in terms of users, an average of 3.3 riders per vehicle. What is being done to increase the demand? Is there enough advertising being done? It's such a good service that I don't understand that not more people are using it. And although, I mean, the numbers have gone up. Well, I think Nick talked about it. There's, there was the pandemic. People are, this is a tool. If we wanted to increase the duration or the duration of there's a lot of parameters that we can look at with that tool. If we increase the duration of the trip, maybe we could go get higher numbers, but sometimes we have groups of 5 or 6 people and families. So we do have that capacity, and it's also accessible for wheelchairs as well. In terms of advertisement, we have a very good support from the communications department. We have posters that talk about on-demand transit, and those are circulating in the buses themselves too. We have advertisements or communications regarding this service. So we're using the tools that we have. Maybe we could establish a partnership with Kodiak Transpo. So maybe we can align our efforts and our communications efforts better. That might help us go and get more people. Well, the project is new, so it's good that we're not at full capacity already. But thank you for asking my questions, and once again, congratulations. It's on a great program. Councillor Luigi. Leboutier. There was I might be wrong, but we still have one vehicle, or are there several? Yes, it's a minibus. But we also have 2 or maybe possible 3 minivans. So when the minibus is being maintained or in repair, or we use a minivan instead. Okay, so we're refusing trips, and so as from what I see, that there's an increase in the number of rejection, and is it's due to an increase in demand. Okay, well then my other question is this. So we've got the costs. If we increase the number of vehicles, do our fixed costs, such as the Blaze contract, do those costs stay the same? Because we could maybe save a lot by adding other minibuses. Well, if we add other minivans, those are the only costs that will go up. The costs of the Blaze agreement won't go up. But that's what I was saying. That was one of our challenges. It's a small provider, and when we started with our shuttles, we asked them to take on-demand transit, and there's a maximum capacity that they have. And that's why we have to decide where we're going to go with on-demand transit, to make sure that our provider will be able to increase his capacity as well, and that he can accommodate an increase in the number of vehicles. Okay, well, that's with that supplier, but we could go and see if there are other providers as well. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's part of our analysis. Are people satisfied with the size of the minibus? Well, we're just hearing good comments, both from the drivers and the users, because I don't know if you've tried one of the buses, but it's very easy to get on and off the bus. So we're hearing just positive comments. Well, personally, I think it's very great. I think and I think it gives a lot of visibility to the city. Now, I had another question, and that's what made me think about asking a question about the costs. I thought because we have an increase and we have fixed costs, maybe we should be looking at adding buses. Well, if I understand your question, because of the demand that's increasing, well, we had mentioned that you had mentioned that we would probably be increasing our fixed routes instead of increasing the number of minibuses. But maybe we're not there. Maybe you're just at the analysis phase. But I'm just asking why, if minibus costs less, why would we go and get more fixed routes? It's a good question, but I think there's like a threshold at one point of capacity that we can offer, even if we add another minibus. And that's what we're looking at to see what we do best. So what we're looking at is to add maybe certain fixed routes on those areas that were indicated in the use maps that we showed. But there are also other areas that don't currently use on-demand transit, but that could be using it. So there's additional capacity that we can go get. But your question is very good. I have a last question. Okay, so it's what's the time? So 6:30 to 10 o'clock, and then on the weekends, and then there are different hours for Saturday and Sunday as well. Right. Is that everything? I don't see any further questions, but I have a question regarding use, the statistics on use. So on page 40, in 2021, the curve is very high. The curve is very high. It goes up and then it goes back again. It goes back down again. Compared to 2022, where it's quite a bit more stable. So do you have an idea? Have you done an analysis on the differences? What happened in 2022 or 2021? Or you're talking about, it's on page 40. Yeah, it's that one.
Que ce soit pour le transport de monde et le transport en commun, il y a toujours une augmentation en septembre et octobre.
We always see an increase in September and October, and we think that that's because students are going back to school, and then we see a lull in December because of the holidays, and that explains a little bit of what you're referring to. But then in September 2022, there wasn't much of an increase. Are you comparing August to September 2022? Yeah, when you compare the two curves, 2021, 2022, I see there's a big difference. But I wonder if you dug deeper to see what the cause of this curve was in 2021. I can't say that we proceeded with a strict analysis, but in 2021, it was the start of the pilot project. So in July, August, September, we made some adjustments. The clientele is starting to use the system and develop routines. So this curve from the first month, in my opinion, comes from the novelty of it. It's a new project. People are trying it for the first time. And then with changes that we make sometimes on a weekly basis to improve the efficiency of the system, people understand better each week and each month how to use it. And that increases user ridership. So this curve from 2021 is the reason for which we see this increase. In 2022, we continued to make adjustments and see how we can improve the system. But in 2022, the changes weren't as drastic because drastic changes weren't as necessary. And that's where you see a leveling off of the number of rides. Thank you. I think that explains it very clearly, and it's encouraging to see that 2022 is rather stable indeed. Hopefully that it will increase over the future. Thank you for your presentation. Our next presentation is the growth plan for public transit with Jérémy Aubé. Good evening, Mr. Aubé. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor and councillors and people at home. Thank you for taking the time to hear us this evening to present our growth plan for public transit. And we'll also speak about our vision for the future for public transport in Dieppe. So the goal of our plan is to develop a vision for the future of public transit in Dieppe. We also want to identify and validate our growth needs for the public transit service. We also want to respond to citizen demand and to support a proactive approach. The idea here is to have one home, one car. So we want to provide residents an alternative to owning a car that is affordable and reliable to get around. So here's the why behind our vision and growth plan. First is it's a request we're getting from citizens. We have a lot of exchanges with our citizens through social media or from feedback from regular riders. And so we got a better idea of what the demand was for public transit, and it's helping us to improve our mobility plan for the city. In terms of immigration and population growth, as you know, the region is particularly attractive to newcomers. So people who come to Dieppe have expectations with regards to public transit. So we're trying to meet those expectations for people that are coming from away. Also, we're expecting population growth, so we can draw a pretty straight line there. If there's a population increase, we'll probably have a transportation need increase. We also want to be an environmentally friendly city. So by having public transit, we reduce the number of vehicles on the streets and then reduce greenhouse gas emissions. For future residential development, transportation is important. We need there to be transportation option for high density areas, whether they are currently densely populated areas or if it's coming in the future. We also note that there's an increased cost of living and transportation is a more cost-effective means of getting around for low-income households. Another thing is the essential service. I think we saw this through the pandemic. Transportation is an essential service. It allows citizens to get around, to work, to study, to meet their basic needs, and to find entertainment and leisure activities, and just to have a basic standard of living. So I think that this is a very important point in the reasoning behind our objectives. And then, of course, we want to have a stable mobility offer. Our citizens have told us that they want more stable services. This is why we have private pilot projects. So we're trying to have a more regular, stable service in the city of Dieppe. I would like to give you an overview of the current situation. We have three routes in the city of Dieppe. You can see on screen, it might be a little too small, but in green you see line 93. It also has a stretch on Dieppe Boulevard, and then it comes back to Champlain Street. Then there's line 94 that's purple, and it serves the Central Street area. and then line 95 that serves the Amiraux area with a route on Fox Creek and Mélenchon. Also, there's a taxi bus service that is a complimentary service by Kodiak Transport, and you can see them on the map. There are two routes, one that covers the Champlain Trail, and then there's the Amiraux route that serves Amiraux between Fox Creek and GF. In terms of future potential routes, there are three that are being considered. I would say that these are still at the conceptual stage. It's really a starting point to increasing the routes in the city. So I'd like to go straight to the visual representations of these routes. So Route 1 would be a community route that goes by Boulevard Champlain, Dieppe Nord, Mélenchon, and coming back on Amiraux Street. Route B covers Chartersville, Lakeburn, and Lorette, and it also does double duty on Amiraux. And finally, Route C, or C1 rather, is in the eastern part of the city, and it goes down Adelaide-Savoie, Belforêt, Fox Creek, Amiraux, and Dover. So this is mostly on the eastern portion of town. Online, you can see a summary map that shows an overlay of the routes. So you can see basically a composite of the existing routes, which you can see in green on screen. And then there's the projected routes A, B, and C that would be the routes that we would like to add to the network. And then in orange, you see the taxi bus routes. So this is a summary map. As I said earlier, this is a concept and it would be a staged approach. So we won't be launching what you see on screen all in one shot, but this is what we're working towards. We would like to serve the areas that you see on screen right now. In terms of forecasting our needs, these new routes will increase the service level. It could be higher frequency. So perhaps we could get to 15-minute service during peak times and half-hour service in off-peak times. We would also have double duty on some of the busiest routes. So if we have more frequency and more routes serving the same route, this could improve service on these high traffic areas. With increased service, we'll also need a greater number of vehicles, and that comes with a budget increase. So this is a capital expenditure, but also operational expenditures. If we have more routes, more lines, more service, we'll need more staff also to serve these routes. So the benefits of the plan. First, there will be a reduction of automobile use. I think this will have many impacts, one on traffic, on main routes. This could also lighten the load on critical points of the road network. I also spoke earlier about greenhouse gas emissions that would be reduced because there would be a reduction of the number of vehicles on the road. And then I would say there's a positive impact on the infrastructure by reducing the number of vehicles on the street. We could probably expect to have a longer lifespan for our roads, and there could be some budget advantages related to this as well. There are also benefits for immigration and population growth. I think this is a non-negligible point. It's one of the reasons for which we want to bring this growth to the public transit system in Dieppe. As I mentioned earlier, this is an affordable alternative. So I'd like to add to this that not everyone people shouldn't always have to own a vehicle to be active participants in the community. the more people use public transit, the more practical it becomes, and the more likely it is to replace the need for an automobile. So next steps. We talked earlier about how we've already started on some of these steps, but we do have some work to do on the public consultation and citizen participation. We want to validate our ideas. I think we understand the needs well, but then what we want to do is test the solutions that we've proposed, and we would do this through public consultation. Then once we've had a chance to exchange with stakeholders, partners, institutions, and businesses, industries, and residents, we will compile the feedback that we receive from these people and then proceed to a concept review and compare it to the feedback we've received. Then we would move on to the identification of infrastructure and required equipment, and we would go attack this growth with a phased approach. Then we would have to plan our budget, and then we would move on to improvements in 2022. And this would be to return to a pre-pandemic level of service. My colleague mentioned earlier in his presentation that we need to see what we can do now, and then from there, we want to see what can be done in the longer term. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you for your presentation. Do any council members have any questions? Ms. Boudreau, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I was looking forward to hearing this presentation for a long time. Very happy to see it. I support your proactive approach, and I agree that transportation is an essential service. It would be so great for the city of Dieppe. On-demand transportation did help. It gave us an understanding of where the city is going, but it's a complementary service to fixed routes. I think that this was proven time and again. People who come from away are used to fixed routes, and it's easier to get around with those. My question is this. We would add 3 routes, and I tried to imagine what it would be like to take that route and go to the IGA or to go to the Rotary Park. It would be easier to get around. Now, before there was a bus connection area, which was at Place Champlain. This is where you could go to catch all the buses. Now there are going to be new uh, hubs or transfer stations. It could be between C1 and B, and there's a connection there with A, and that also connects to the 93. So, will there be hubs where there would be like larger transit shelters, where there'll be trash bins, where there will be signage with the city, the map of the city and the transport network? So will we identify these areas where we would add these connection hubs? Well, we haven't determined the exact spot, but we have discussed how this is needed. We've expressed our desire to have transfer points, uh, maybe not to the scale of what you see at Place Champlain, but we want to give users the opportunity to go to various areas of the city, and they should be able to transfer to different lines. So yes, it's something that we would like to do, but we haven't been able to identify exactly where they are just yet.
Une chose importante aussi pour
I think
faciliter
this will be important to 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 facilitate use by riders. You know, if people see, okay, well, my next route or trip is arriving in 30 minutes, and to clearly identify where the connections are, so that makes it you make sure that you get off at the right spot. Those places will have to be clearly identified. Yes. You know, we're looking at that, how you can inform places at those kind of mini stops. We want to be able to inform people so that they can use the network across the city. Thank you.
Madame Leboutier.
Councillor Leboutier. I really found this very exciting too. I know that we'll be looking at analyzing and asking our citizens what they think, and I'm sure that it's great to offer these services, but there's a cost associated, and we're limited in what we can offer. And when there should be a reasonable cost, and we should be able to budget for that. What I'd like to see, and because we're trying to be innovative and we're planning for the future, what I'd like to see that is, we're talking about Kodiak Transpo, but why could we not have our own fleet in Dieppe? That's something that not only I would like, but everybody would like to see. So what would the costs be? Are there benefits? Are there, what are the different alternatives and solutions? And, in terms of infrastructure and tools, and I think that's something that we need if we look at where we want to go in the future with public transit. Well, I talked to Luc a little bit about that very topic, and it's on our radar, and it's part of the analysis that we want to do. We want to look at the available alternatives, but that's a very good point. That's something that we'll be looking at eventually. We'll be looking at the advantages and the pros and cons, and yeah, thank you. Councillor Lanting. Thank you, Your Worship, or Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. A quick question. With the expansion of the bill following municipal reform, are there plans to serve the greater Lakeburn area with public transit or on-demand transit? It was discussed, and that's something that I maybe focused less on in my presentation, but on-demand transit becomes a real interesting option for those areas. So yes, we will be looking at how we're going and how we'll be serving the annexed region, and we'll be looking at how, what the best way, whether it's public transit or on-demand transit. Thank you. All right. I don't see any further questions, so thank you for your presentation. And I have to say that I'm very pleased to see that this improvement that we're putting in place. I think the question of cost, I think if we have a good service, people will be ready to pay for that. If we don't have a good service, then nobody's going to want to get on board. So I think we're heading in the right direction, and thank you. And that's everything. That's all the topics that we had for tonight. So enjoy the rest of your evening.